house is the only K-type elevated dwelling left standing in Darwin. It's an outstanding piece of tropical architecture, well suited to the tropical climate with louver windows. It's elevated, good ventilation. Unfortunately, it's not terribly well suited for an area prone to cyclonic activity.
Cyclone Tracy was centred 200 kilometres north-northeast of Cape Don at 9 p.m. and moving west-southwest at 12 kilometres per hour. Gales are not expected on the coast within 24 hours.
It was Christmas Eve 1974. By late afternoon, Darwin was covered by low cloud with intense rain. Most residents believed that the forecast cyclone wouldn't affect the city, as a previous cyclone, Selma, had been predicted to hit Darwin earlier in the month but hadn't. As a result, most residents continued with their Christmas preparations. When Cyclone Tracy hit Darwin around midnight, most residents were unprepared and a number were even attending Christmas parties. The winds hit a peak at 217 kilometres an hour, a Category 4 cyclone, before the recording device failed. Now, a number of meteorologists believe that Cyclone Tracy was actually a Category 5 cyclone, the most damaging rating for cyclones. It was in fact the smallest cyclone recorded and held that record until 2008. The electricity supply failed at 3:30 a.m. All essential services failed shortly after, including communications, water and sewage. Cyclone Tracy moved at only 10 kilometres per hour and as a result hung over Darwin, inflicting its damage for several hours. In daylight on Christmas Day, it became apparent that much of Darwin had been destroyed, with only around 6% of its houses more or less intact, minus their windows. Cyclone Tracy is still considered to be Australia's most destructive cyclone to date.
Cyclone Tracy killed 71 people and destroyed 80% of the houses. As a result, 30,000 of city population of 47,000 were evacuated to other cities, never to return. Indigenous local people such as Larrakia people believe that Cyclone Tracy was a consequence for not looking after the land. So they left at the early sign of Selma and came back months, years later. These evacuations took weeks to move the thousands of people, and those often meant families were separated. At the time of Tracy, there were no mobile phones or internet, so communication was very difficult. So as a result, this leads to many people being mentally affected, either by the loss of family member or just the event itself.
People faced an unimaginable force of nature when Cyclone Tracy hit, with their only defence being their own flesh and bone. Everything else all but disappeared. Cyclone Tracy's impact on the natural environment was catastrophic. Damage inflicted on the sewage system resulted in inadequate sanitation and the contamination of water sources, and so supply was cut. Beaches were covered in dead corals and rotting marine life. Trees were uprooted. The bird and insect populations were decimated. The food chain was broken. The cyclone's impact was unheard of, leaving nothing standing. 90% of Darwin's houses were demolished. 45 vessels were wrecked in the harbour. Army troops were deployed to clear hazardous materials. Refuse dumps worked continuously to receive garbage and debris. Twice weekly, aerial sprayings of the city were done to control mosquitoes and other insect pests. The combination of measures adopted, powerfully assisted by the mammoth evacuation exercise, resulted in a high standard of environmental control, which, without question, contributed to the virtual absence of disease. In the aftermath, planners proposed several radical rebuildings of the city. However, the newly established Darwin Reconstruction Commission settled with the intention to rebuild the city as it once stood. The Commission achieved its aim of reconstruction ahead of their schedule, and within 3 years, the city was resettled.
The economic impact of Cyclone Tracy was huge due to the devastation to homes and businesses. Businesses closed or ceased to exist, employees were evacuated. It cost over $800 million to reconstruct Darwin. In today's terms, that's over $4 billion. The liner Patrice was tied up at the Darwin waterfront for 9 months to provide emergency accommodation for up to 900 people. Tracy Village was set up for construction workers. 1,700 demountable dwellings and caravans were brought to Darwin and located on house sites. Hotels and hostels were fully utilised. Short-term repairs were undertaken to make damaged houses habitable. In May 1975, contracts were let to 4 firms to construct 2,000 homes. In 1978, the Darwin Reconstruction Commission had completed 3,000 new dwellings. NT Housing Commission and the private sector also contributed to the redevelopment of the housing stock. Infrastructure needed repair or replacement. Building costs doubled compared to pre-cyclone costs, mainly due to the requirement to source materials from other parts of Australia. Somehow it seems quite fitting that we can film the conclusion at the ruins of the old town hall. There is no doubt that Cyclone Tracy had a devastating impact on Darwin. Over 60% of the population that left never returned. There have, however, been lessons learned and some positive outcomes. The Northern Territory has, through the redesign of building codes, some of the strongest houses in Australia, and Darwin's houses, built since 1975, are designed to survive a Category 4 cyclone. Infrastructure is now located underground. Cyclone Tracy also demonstrated the generosity of the Australian public. Once the news that the destruction that Cyclone Tracy had caused, community groups across Australia began fundraising, assisting the survivors. Approximately 24 hours after the storm hit Darwin, the people of Alice Springs raised over $105,000 to assist the victims. Down in Melbourne, at the Boxing Day Test cricket match, members of both teams walked around the stadium carrying buckets, which the crowd threw cash into to help the relief funds. The song Santa Never Made It to Darwin was performed in 1975 to raise money for relief and reconstruction efforts. It isn't a matter if a major cyclone hits Darwin in the future, but when. Due to the lessons learned from Cyclone Tracy, Darwin will be in a much better position than in 1975.